In this episode, I'll be starting a new series where I showcase 25 different ideas of small ways to decorate your map, with all of them being doable for a beginner mapper. And today we're looking at items for a behind the scenes style map, with each item being more advanced than the last. So let's get started. The first decorative item of this video is a spilled coffee cup. It's a small but fun little detail you can include in office areas. First, you need to make an entity and make it a prop static. Often you see cups use prop physics override if you want to pick it up, but here I use a prop static. In the model browser, search mug and you can pick one of these models. Rotate the mug so it's spilled over. Next, we need to select the overlay tool, and in the texture browser we search stain and select this stain here. Place it down and position it so it looks like it's poured out of the mug, and I'm also going to disable collision on the mug. Now on to the next item. Next up, we have a similar concept with the tipped over cardboard box. Another good one to include in office areas to add more character to your environment. First, you make a new prop static, and in the browser you search file box and you select this model. Next, duplicate the prop and turn this one into the lid variant of this model. Now go to the texture browser and search tile. Find this tile debris overlay and use the overlay tool to place it down. Even though the texture is intended to be tiles, they can very easily be seen as bits of paper instead. Next, I'm going to rotate the box and the lid so that they look as if the box was tipped over. The lid fell off and all these papers fell out of the box. And we're done. The next item is a detailed photocopier, featuring an actual paper being copied. This one is pretty simple to set up. Create a new prop static and search for the copier in the model browser. You want to select the broken model as this is the one with the open top. Next, create another new prop static and search for paper. You want to use this paper of obscure scientific drawings and place one inside the copier and another one being printed. Now it's ready to be used in an office. Next up, we're looking at using offset posters. Of course, using posters is a very common part of making behind the scenes areas, but we can use this trick to make them more realistic. First, you need to choose your poster. Most of them can be found through searching signage in the texture browser. Next, place it on your wall, and now you want to select it and hold Alt to enable free move, and slightly rotate the poster. It makes it look slightly more realistic if the poster is a little offset rather than perfectly aligned. I also added another poster to demonstrate this further. Now let's move on to the next item. Next up is how you can use electric gizmos in desk decoration. Normally there aren't bits of technology specifically for desk decoration, however if you use robot parts from Co-op, you can still achieve this. Create a new prop static and search for Gib. Next, search for these pieces of the robots from Co-op, however make sure you only use the non-burning versions of the model. Now you can place these on your table and rotate them to make sure they look like they're properly laying on the desk. You'll also want to include an NV cube map entity when using these models to avoid any bad reflections. And now you're all done. I like to use these mainly in factory settings, mixing them with other desk props like papers and computers. Now on to the next item. Now we're going to look at adding some seats in scenic places. This item is less about how to place a chair model and more about when to do it in places where there might not normally be a chair. In a few of my maps I have these large vistas, and I sometimes set up a chair that has been placed there by an employee so that they could watch. It's a small detail, but it adds to the world building and charm of the map. To make it, you need to add a prop static, and in the model browser search for folding and pick this folding chair. You can also add an additional item to go with it, such as water, food, or an ashtray. I'm going to add an ashtray prop, and you can find them by searching smoking, and also add a food can model which you can find by searching can. You'll also want to add a cube map for the ashtray and can reflections to work. And we're done. On to the next item. Next up, we're looking at adding paint spill detailing to any signage or wall art you might have in your maps. Here on this wall, I'm going to select the overlay tool and place this wall art on this wall for this example. Next, in the texture browser, I'm going to search paint and pick some of these to place around my walls in the corners as overlays. Make sure to change the render order so that these paints overlap the wall art, and I'm also going to place a few paint strips on the floor around it too. Here's how it looks in game. It's a very simple addition, but it makes it feel a bit more real and a bit less pristine. Next, we're going to look at Aperture Branding. In Portal, we see Aperture Branding all throughout Aperture, so it's good to include a bit of Aperture Branding in your own map, and even decorate the sign a bit. Here I have a big brush, and in the texture browser I'm going to search Aperture and pick this texture. Next I'm going to use the overlay tool and place it on my wall. Now I'm going to center it and rescale it to fit the brush. Another detail I'm going to add is lights. So first I'm going to create a new prop static, and in the model browser search neon and choose these light strips. Next I'm going to create a light entity, align it with the light model, make it a light bluish colour and give it a brightness of 30. Now I'm going to duplicate the light model and the light entity 2 times so that we have these 3 lights above the sign. This makes sure the sign is very visible and stands out. Here's how it looks in game. Our next item is going to be ladders. I'm not just talking about leaving them around on a floor, this is for believably adding them to your maps. Maybe you have a map with a tall room and you want a ladder so that workers could have reached something high up. Here on this wall I'm going to create a new prop static and select this fuse model as this higher prop. Next I'll create another new prop static and search for ladder in the model browser. Now you want to rotate it slightly using free rotate by holding Alt, and position it so it looks like it's correctly leaning against the wall. In game it looks like this. Next up we're looking at stacked items. These are supposed to be secondary decoration to go alongside other office decorations like desks and computers, using these to fill in the gaps and put under desks. First I'll make a new prop static and make it a desk for this demonstration. Now I'm going to create a new prop static, and in the model browser I will choose this cardboard box model. I'll move it under the desk and shift drag to duplicate it to create another one. Rotate the new one slightly to create some asymmetry, then duplicate it again and place the third one on top of the other 2. I'm also going to use free move by holding Alt to get these all in the perfect position. For another example, I'm going to create another prop and choose this old monitor model. They have a different shape to the boxes, but they can still be stacked, so I roughly follow the same process. And finally, I'll give one more example. For this model I'm about to use, you need to use a prop dynamic, then search for the file box and choose this model. Now I'm going to follow a similar process and stack these on either side of the desk. Although keep in mind these props don't have collision, so you may want to manually place invisible brushes around the prop, but here is how they look in game. The next item is going to be cable box combinations. You might be familiar with these cable models, and something you can do with them is use multiple of them to create all sorts of fuse box-like combinations. I'll show you one here on this small wall. First, create a new prop static, then search cable in the model browser, and I'm going to select this model here. Now I'm going to place it on the wall here, then shift drag to duplicate it, and I'll make this new prop this cable bundle model. This one is very useful as it has that loop, which is where I like to place other cable boxes. You'll want to use free move to get it in place. Now create another new prop, and this time I'm going to select this smaller circular cable box model. I'm going to rotate both this and the cable bundle so that they align with the cable going through the cable box. Now for an extra detail for the light on the model, I'm going to create a new entity and make it an NV sprite. For sprite name, I'm going to search for Glow 03 and pick this texture. And because the sprite is small, I can keep the alpha quite high, but I will change it to 220. I'll also change the scale to 0.1. Next, I'm going to change the color to a bright green. Now I'm going to use free move to align this sprite with the green dot on the model. Now in game, it should look like this. Next, we're going to look at cable usage, specifically lines of cables using these specific cable models. They can be particularly good in factories or for subtly showing the player the direction to go in by pointing at it with the cables. For this, I'm going to create a new prop static, and in the model browser we search cable. Choose this cable set B model and then move it into position, and I will shift drag to duplicate it until it's the length I want it to be. Once it's the length you want, choose one of the beams and shift drag to duplicate one of these models, then in the model browser pick one of these cable set models. Align it so that the clamp is at the bottom of the beam, then duplicate it again so that the new model's clamp starts at the end of the cable of the last one. Then you can pick another one of the cable set models. There are 5 different ones, each of different lengths, so it's a good idea to pick a mix of them based on the length of your cable. Don't just go for the longest ones, include a few really short ones to create some variation throughout the cable. And for the end, rather than picking one of the cable sets, pick the cable clamp model and place it at the end of the last cable. Here's how it looks in game. Next up, we're looking at a plank to cross a broken catwalk. It's a fun little way to add both storytelling and some variation into your catwalks. So first you'll need your catwalk setup. I have this small one here with a gap in the middle. Next I'm going to create a new prop static and search for walkway, and choose this destroyed walkway model. There are 2 variants of this. I'm going to place each one on either end of this gap. Now I'm going to create another new prop static and this time search for wood. I'm going to pick this 64 by 128 wood panel model, and now I'm going to align it so it sits across the gap. Now I'm not going to leave it perfectly flat, make sure to give it some slight rotation so it looks like it's properly resting on either side of the destroyed catwalk. Here's how it looks in game. Our next item is going to be creating a path with tiles. This is good for showing the player the way to go in an office area. I'm going to use this brush here for this demonstration. First, make the floor a tile texture. I'm going to choose this grey one here. Next, use the cutting tool to create the shape of the path. Make sure you give it a width of 128 units. And for the main path, I'm going to select this white tile texture. Now on the sides, I'm going to use the cutting tool again and create an 8 unit thick brush on the side of this main path. On this brush, I'm going to select this plaster texture. We specifically want the bottom variant. Now adjust the rotation by degrees of 90 and adjust the alignment until you get this strip. We want the main grey part of the strip touching the main path. Now I'm going to do the same process on the other side. This is how it looks in game. It's a nice way of making paths in an office area and looks much better than just leaving the whole floor one texture. Our next item is going to be this glowing orange fuse box. Turning just a fuse box into another light source can be a fun extra usage for it. To make it, we first need a prop static. Then I search for fuse in the model browser and find the fuse box with those orange lights. Align it with the wall and then create a new light entity and position it in front of all those lights. I'm going to make it orange and make the brightness 10. We want it darker than usual lights as it isn't a main light source. Next, we create a new NV sprite entity and also make that orange. It's going to be a slightly bigger sprite, so I'm going to make the alpha 180. Next, I set the scale to 1.5 and adjust the size of the glow proxy geometry to be much larger as the light source is larger. And finally, I'm going to change the sprite to light glow 03, which is my personal preference for sprite textures. In game, it looks like this. Next up, we're looking at adding a ticking clock. Normally, you don't hear clocks ticking, but it's a simple little feature that can add a lot of ambience to an area. To make it, first we need to create a prop static. Search for clock in the model browser, choose this model and align it with your wall. Make sure it is rotated correctly. Next, create a new entity and make it an ambient generic. In the sound browser, search for tick and choose this single mechanical tick sound. Position the ambient generic in front of the clock, give it a unique name. I'm calling mine clock SFX. I'm going to lower both the volume and the range of the sound. As it is only a small clock, it won't be that loud. Next, create a new entity and make it a logic timer. Make the refire interval 1 and add the output on timer clock SFX play sound. You can add a name to the logic timer if you want the ticking to be turned off and on, but I'm going to leave mine as is. In game, it sounds like this. Now we're going to look at light cage presentation. If you've made behind the scenes areas before, you've likely used this cage model, but you can go a step further by putting extra effort into the presentation of the light cage. Let's begin. Here is the brush I'm going to place the light cage on. Its dimensions are 64 by 128. I'm going to change the texture to this yellow back panel texture. I personally prefer to use the no spec variant. Next, I'm going to create a new prop static. In the model browser, search for square and choose this square beam model. Now align it so that it is sat on the wall. Shift drag to duplicate it and place it above it. Create a new prop static and search for conduit. Choose this blue model. And again, align it so it's on the wall with the thicker blue frames facing out. Now again, create a new prop static and now we're going to add the light cage model, which is placed on the conduit. Next, we create a new entity and make it a light. Position it in front of the light cage and I'm going to set the color to a light warm yellow color and set the brightness to 30. Next, create another new entity and make it an NV sprite. Set the sprite to a similar color as the light, and as it's going to be quite big, I'm going to set the alpha to 160. Once again, I change the sprite to light glow 03, change the scale to be 3, set the size of the glow proxy geometry to 64 to cover the whole light, and now in game it should look like this. You can also change the square beams to their blue variant by switching to skin 2 if you want. Next, we're looking at damaged flickering lights. This is good for creating a more decrepit environment or also drawing the player's attention to a certain area. First, create a new prop dynamic and in the model browser search for wall light and find this light model. Make sure you pick the one with the light bulb. Now place it on my wall, give it a unique name. I'm calling mine wall light MDL. Now create a new entity and make it a light spot and position it just below the light model. I'm going to keep it straight down rather than align it with the bulb so that the light hits the wall better, which provides a better effect in my opinion. Next, I'm going to change the color to a warm color and set the brightness to 50. I'm going to change the inner bright angle to 15 and the outer to 40. I'll also give it a unique name. I'm calling mine wall light spot. Now create another new entity and make it a point spot spotlight. I'm going to call it wall light beam. Now I align it perfectly with the bulb by holding Alt for free move. Set the color to something similar to before. I'm going to change the spotlight length to 64 and keep width at 50. I'm going to change the HDR color scale, which is basically the opacity for this entity, to 0.5. Now I'm going to create an NV spark and name it wall light spark. Then I position it next to the bulb. Now for the actual flickering, I'm going to create a logic relay. Create a new output on trigger, wall light model, skin 1. This changes the model to its deactivated variant. Then I make another output to the spark to spark once. Then an output to the light spot with the output to turn off. I will quickly say that you need to be careful with turning off lights and light spots. Too many dynamic lights in the same area can create issues, but given this is only one, it will be safe. Light spots are also the best light entities to make toggleable, as the light they produce is more controllable and less likely to accidentally overlap with other lights. But finally, we add another output to the beam with the output light off. Then give the logic case a unique name. I'm calling mine wall light off LR. Then shift drag to duplicate the logic case and rename the duplicate wall light on LR. Then in the outputs change the skin parameter for the model to 0. Change turn off for the light spot to turn on, and for the beam change it to light on. Add a new output to the other logic case to enable it with a delay of 0.01 seconds, and do another output to itself by using !self, but to disable it again with a 0.01 second delay. Select both outputs and click copy. Go to the other logic relay and click paste, but change the enable output to the other logic relay. And on wall light on LR, change start disabled to yes. Now create a new entity and make it a logic timer. Add the output on timer, wall light on LR, trigger, and do the same for the other logic relay. Change use random time to yes. I'm going to set the minimum random interval to 2 and a maximum to 5. You can alter this if you like, and you can also name the logic timer if you want to enable it and disable it, but I'm not going to do that here. In game, it should now all work. Next up, we're going to look at broken sliding doors. Having inaccessible paths in your map is a good idea for making Aperture feel bigger, but it's even better if a player can tell at a glance that they can't go that way. To make these broken doors, we need a doorway. I'm using this wall door prop between two brushes. First, we need to make a new prop static. Search for sliding in the model browser and choose a singular half of a sliding door. Place it in your door frame, then shift drag to duplicate it, and place the duplicate on the other side of the door frame. Next, I'm going to select a door and hold Alt for free move, and adjust the door slightly so that it's offset at a slight angle. I'm going to do this with both doors. This gives it that broken look. Next, you can add a new prop static and select the sliding door sensor. Place it on the top of the door. If the other side of the door is also visible, you will have to place one on the other side too. Next, create a new entity and make it an NV sprite. I'm going to select light glow 03, change the color to a bright red. I'm going to set the alpha to 240, the scale to 0.1, then move the sprite so that it's on the red light on the sensor model. You'll also need to add a cube map if you don't already have one. Now in game, it should look like this. Our next item is going to be spinning fans. These are a great way to add a dynamic feature to your maps. For this example, I'll be showing you how to make a fan in the ceiling. First, create a new prop dynamic, then in the model browser search for fan. I'm going to select this small fan model. Next, I'm going to rotate so that this bit that sticks out from the center is facing up. Now I'm going to create a new small node draw brush centered on the fan, hit Ctrl T to turn it into a brush entity, and then turn it into a funk rotating. Give it a unique name. I'm calling mine Fan Rot. In flags, tick start on. We don't need to tick any of the axis flags as it's already on the correct axis. Back in class info, go to sound and search for fan. I'm going to select this fan sound. Next, I'm changing the max rotation speed to 200, but you can change this to whatever you want. Next, we go to the prop dynamic and select the rotating brush as the parent. Then, around the entire fan, I'm going to create a new brush and make this 128 by 128, so it covers the whole fan. I'm also going to expand above the fan. This is going to become the area seen above the fan. Overlapping that brush, I create another new 128 by 128 brush, but before generating it, I change the type to cylinder, and for the number of sides I select 16. although you can go higher or lower if you want more or less detail. Now I expand the new cylinder brush so it goes above and below the other brush, but still centered on it. With it selected, you click on Tools in the top left and select Carve. Now I delete the cylinder brush and we can see it's made this hole through the other brush. With the cutting tool, I cut the bottom of the brush with a gap of 16 units from the bottom, and for this new cut section I'm applying this square beam texture. For the parts above it I use this metal gradient texture, and make sure the orange bit is at the top. For the texture at the very top, I'm going to select this pure orange texture. I'm also going to apply my ceiling to the texture at the bottom. Now I move the fan back inside the brush, aligned with the bottom of the cylinder. At the bottom, but not the very bottom, a few units above that, I'm going to create another new thin brush that covers the whole area, and on both sides of this brush I'm going to apply a grey texture. Normally you don't texture sides the player can't see, but we want shadows from the grate, so this will be important. And above the fan I'm going to create another new brush to help support and connect the fan. This won't cover the whole area, but will still touch the opposite sides of the walls and connect it to the fan. I'm also going to give it a metal texture. These fans are a great place to have dynamic shadows, so above the fan we're going to create a new entity and make it an NV projected texture. Have it face straight down. In flags, tick enabled and always update. I'm going to change my light color to a bright orange. There are other settings here which you can tweak if you like, but I'm leaving them as they are. I'm going to once again create a brush covering the full 128 by 128 area, although this time very thin and at the bottom. Select arch for the type and use settings like this, although make sure the number of sides is the same for the number of sides of your cylinder from earlier. Now you can adjust it so that it starts at the grate and slightly pokes out at the bottom. I'm also going to apply a metal texture to it. Now in game it should look like this. Next up we're looking at duct pipes with leaking gas. Great for adding a bit of atmosphere to your map. First up we need to make the duct. I'm going to create a prop static and in the model browser search for duct. Choose the duct round models. I'm using a few different types to create my one. Where you want the bit that shoots out the gas, you want to choose a T-junction duct like this, then create another new duct and make it a diffuser, then connect it to the T-junction duct. Then you select both the T-junction and the diffuser, and then move the origin to inside the main duct part where the T-junction is. You can rotate both of them to face the direction you want. Next, create a new entity and make it an info particle system. Place it directly in front of the diffuser and rotate it so that the line is pointing outward from the diffuser. Set start active to yes, and next open the particle browser. If your particle browser is empty, follow the instructions in the description, but if it's all fine, search for steam. I'm going to pick steam child mist. Next you can create another new entity and make it an ambient generic. Place it by the diffuser and in sounds search for gas. Pick this gas release sound. I'm going to lower the sound and the range as it should be fairly quiet. And in flags, untick is not looped and start silent, so nothing should be ticked here. I'm also going to add a wall for this duct to go on, and here is how it looks in game. Next we're looking at computers with flashing lights. You're likely familiar with this model, but you can go a step further and add these dynamic lights to the computers, making them feel much more alive. First we create a new prop static and search for computer in the model browser. I'm going to select this model. Then once the computer is in position, we need to create another new entity and make it an NV sprite. This sprite I'm going to change to bright green and set the alpha to 240 and the scale to 0.1. I'll again change the sprite to light glow 03. The idea of this is to have different coloured sprites on the various buttons we can see on the model. So here I'm going to use shift drag to duplicate to make two more sprites for red and yellow. Now I start placing these sprites on the computer. You don't need to do it on every single button, it's better to do it on just enough buttons, whatever feels best. You'll want to hold Alt to use free move to get these into position. This part will take the longest. And finally, when you've got them all in the positions you want them to be, select multiple random sprites at once and give them a unique name. I'm calling mine Computer Sprites 1, and also with them still selected, go to flags and tick Start On. Then press H to hide those sprites, and then select another several random sprites. But make sure not to select every sprite, leave some unnamed. This time I'm going to name these Computer Sprites 2. This time do not have them start on. Next, create a new entity and make it a logic timer. I'm going to give mine a refire interval of 2. Next, in the outputs, add the output on timer, Computer Sprites 1, toggle sprites, and do the same for Computer Sprites 2. You can also add sounds to this if you want. First, create an ambient generic, then in the sound browser search for beep, I'm choosing this sound here, then lower the sound and the range again as we want this to be quiet. Give it a unique name, I'm calling mine Computer SFX, then in the logic timer, add the output on timer, Computer SFX, play sound. Now in the game it should look like this. Now you can tweak the settings if you like. Here I feel my yellow sprites are too big, so I switch to a scale of 0.05. I also recenter a few of them, and the result now looks like this. Next up, we're looking at another method of blocked doors, where we can instead have the door blocked off with tape, like what you would see if the area behind was under construction. It's very simple to make. First we need a door. I'm using a similar setup to the last door, however with this one the door is a brush, not a prop. Although you can use any type of door you like for this method, prop or brush, big or small. First we go to the texture browser and search for dev, then find these yellow and black hazard stripes, then create a brush in front of the door that extends way past it. Also make its height pretty short. Mine starts at 16 units but I later change it to 12. Position it so that it's in front of the door and also resize it so that it's very thin. Mine is only 1 unit thick, and rotate the brush so it's at an angle. This makes it look more realistic if it isn't perfectly straight. I'm also going to duplicate the brush and create another one at the top at a different angle. Then with both of them selected, use the cutting tool to cut off the bits that go past the door frame, and with both of them selected, press Ctrl T to turn them into a funk detail. And now we're done. Here's how it looks in game. Now we're going to look at a fun way you can include dripping water in your map, which is a good way to add extra detailing to old offices or other rundown areas of Aperture. To do this, we first need the pipe it will be leaking from. I have a simple round duct setup here, similar to what we had with the gas leak. Now we need to create a new entity and make it an info particle system. In the particle browser, search for drip and pick drip stream 01. Set start active to yes. Next, reposition the particle system so that it's at the bottom of the duct. It's a good idea to keep it slightly below the duct to make sure it doesn't collide with it. Next, make a new entity and make it a prop dynamic override. You can also use a prop physics if you want, and set the model to this water bottle model, and place it directly below the particle system. Next, go to the texture browser and search for stain. Pick this office stain texture and use the overlay tool to place it just below the bottle. I'm also going to shrink mine. Next, I'm going to create a new entity and make it an ambient generic. I'm going to decrease the range and the volume, and in the sound browser, I'm going to search for water. I'm going to use water leak loop 1. In flags, untick start silent and is not looped. Now in game, it should all work. For our final item, we're going to look at a crow that flies away when you get too close, which is a great way to add more life to your map. To start, let's create a new prop static in the model browser. Search for bird and pick this bird nest. Get it in the position you want, then create another new prop and choose the bird model. In the model tab, select nest idle animation to see and hammer where you need to place the bird. The bird has multiple fly off animations. I'm going to use nest fly off. So look at where the bird goes and make sure the endpoint is somewhere that the player can't see anymore. Here I'm just going to create a brush to block the way. Also make sure you change the bird prop to a prop dynamic. Then copy the idle animation name from the model tab and paste it into the default animation. Give the bird a unique name. I'm just going to call it bird. Next I'm going to create a trigger brush around the bird. So in the texture browser, search for trigger, then create a brush surrounding the nest. Use Ctrl T to turn it into a brush entity, and then turn it into a trigger once. Add the output on start touch bird, set animation, and then copy and paste the name of your animation, which in my case is nest fly off. Then add another output to kill the bird once the animation is complete. You can get the time of the animation by dividing the number of frames in the animation by 30. For me that gives roughly 3.6 seconds. Now in game it should all work. And now we're finished. Hope you enjoyed this video and found this useful. If you'd like to see more videos like this, let me know. And also let me know about different themes for the video you might be interested in seeing. And for any questions you have or requests for future videos, you can let me know by joining the Discord. The link is in the description. We also host competitions there in case you're interested in that kind of thing. But that's all from me. See ya.